Are we good? Okay. Okay, I call this special board meeting of the PCSSD School Board to order. It is September the 30th, 2024. Ms. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Ward. Here. Thomas.
Present.
Tate. Here. Smith. Here. Potter. Here. Keller. Delaney.
Present. Okay, would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no public comment tonight, so that will bring us into our only action item of the night, which is our proposed 2024-2025 budget with Ms. Rowlett, possibly assisted by Mr. Trumper.
Sent this to y'all this morning. We tried our best to get it earlier, so I'll try to go slowly tonight. As he said, this is our proposed budget for the 24-25 school years for our legal funds. And I apologize for being a little late. I thought it was 6:30, but anyway. So what the first page, which is page 2 of 9 of your little booklet, it shows that our beginning balance for this school year, our revenue, our beginning balance, which was $16,492,357, and then I give you a breakdown of all the revenues that we collected for total revenues for the 23-24 school year of $166,213,000. Our expenditures, also give you a breakdown of those as well. For salaries and benefits, they were $126,966,000. Operating funds, $23,692,000, and the debt service funds, $16,456,000, for total expenditures of $167,115,000, with an ending balance of $15,591,000. Do you all have any questions about the actuals for 23-24?
It's technical though. Can y'all help me get in this longer?
Because we went over the expenditures at the last meeting, so I didn't bring that, so.
Well,
Okay, go ahead.
I'll ask a question. So on the revenue, in the revenue section of page 2, we have what you've got on here is comp in loss fixed assets.
Well, that's the title of it for in our handbook, in our Arkansas Financial
right.
Accounting Manual, but that's for insurance payments.
And was that for Maumelle?
We had 3 of them. Maumelle, I think we got, was there another one? I'm not sure.
Maumelle was a big one.
Yeah,
We had,
Maumelle was the biggest one, but I can give you a breakdown because it just comes under one code.
Right. So we received the payment for that.
Yes.
And did we spend out on that too?
We've spent all of that insurance money, I think, except for about $600,000 the last time I checked it.
So about 1.4 was spent out of that. And so we're working on the roof, right? And is that's your understanding? I mean, I know you're not in operations, but.
Yeah, but let me say, we have $600,000 left out of this $2 million. I said that wrong, okay.
Have we paid
We paid it all out of the $600,000.
so the contractor has $200,000, or $2 million?
Yes,
Okay, so,
different ones.
So-
Let me bring this spreadsheet. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to follow. So 1.4 we've received?
We received all that, the 2.
We've received all of it?
Yes.
And then what was the 1.4?
What we have left out of this for insurance, is $600,000. When I looked at the expenditures that were, out of this $2 million, I had like a $600,000 balance. But let me get that for you.
Okay, but basically, is just a general understanding is so we book $2 million in insurance payments and it goes into Fund 2, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't go into Fund 3, it goes into Fund 2.
Yeah, you can put it into one,
So,
yes, sir.
right, but we're putting it into Fund 2, and
Yes.
then, but there's supposed to be a corresponding output,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And the output side, we haven't necessarily all paid yet, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And the output side would show up on the expenditures, right?
Yes.
But since this isn't done, some of those expenditures are going to show up in next year's expenditures,
Yes.
right? Because we
Yes.
have to close the book on
Yes.
this year. Okay.
Yes,
All
yes.
right.
And they haven't finished all the
Okay.
projects.
All
Yes,
right.
sir. Any
Okay.
other questions? Yes.
So technically, even though we were supposed to make between, I've heard 10, I've heard 15 million more in taxes, we lost $1 million from when we started, is that right?
Well, we haven't got to that page yet. You mean for this year?
Okay, so you're saying it's the
This
proposed.
this is the actuals for 23, 24. The
Okay.
24, 25 projections are on the next page.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions about 23, 24?
I'll go again.
Okay.
So I was looking at the budget, so last year's budget, because now we're looking at the actuals, which is what ended up happening with the budget page you showed us on last year's, right?
Yes.
So, and you may not have this in front of you, but I've got it here, is we budgeted last September, 155 million in revenue, right? And we ended up receiving 166 in revenue, right? I mean, I understand that there's all kinds of different stuff inside of that revenue, including insurance payments and stuff like that, but between what we budgeted for revenue of about 155.4 million, we ended up receiving something around 16.2,
Now-
166.2,
Well,
right?
when you say that, are you including the revenue for the debt service? I didn't.
I don't know, I'm just looking, I mean, these sheets sort of look the same.
They
you
look
know,
the
and-
same. They look the same.
Well, you could even just go across and say
Yeah.
like property tax revenue, for example, was budgeted at 133.9 and ended up at 136.4, right? And then local revenue was budgeted at 990,000.
Oh, yeah.
And ended up at 4.4.
Yes, now you are right. Okay, thank you for reminding me. We got about 7 million for, we had grants, we had, donations and all of those sort of things. You're right, we did. And it wasn't our standard revenue like your property taxes, state aid or whatever. It would be in the other revenue, the 4 million. See, I didn't budget that much for other revenue, local million. So yeah, that would be right.
But I guess what I'm saying is you would agree that at least on the property tax revenue side, the budget was at 133.9 and we ended up at 136.4,
Yes, and I
right?
normally budget at about 2 million on it,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, I would agree on that. Yes, that's the reason for the big difference. We had a lot of extra revenue that we normally don't get. We had grants, and it came to be about $7 million extra that could not go back in this year because it's revenue that we don't normally get, and I will get you a breakdown of that.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, that's right. Any other questions?
I know, I'm just trying to understand. So, we only see funds 1, 2, and 4.
On this one, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so where do we find Fund 3? Or is that just not
Okay.
even existing?
I was gonna print that out for you. We do have, when I submit the budget, I did put some numbers in for Fund 3, and I didn't bring that report because I thought I had another 30 minutes. I've been working crazy, but I will get that. This is just the legal funds, but we did budget in Fund 3, and right now in Fund 3, I think we have about $50 million, and I can give you a board report that shows you what Mr.
Breakdown.
Johnson's allocated for each one of those, what's in each one of those funds, because he had us to set it up for locations like for Robinson, College Station, Maumelle, Mills, how he put a certain amount in each one of those funds. So yes, ma'am, I can get that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get that.
Even though this is funds 1, 2, and 4, there weren't any transfers in the 23-24 school year into the building fund?
No.
Okay. And then the Donaldson money, are you familiar with that? The
Yes,
1 million from the
that
court?
went to Fund 3.
That went direct to Fund 3. So
Yes,
it's different than
because
the insurance payments, which we put into Fund 2, but Donaldson went straight into Fund 3.
Yes, and per Devon, we put it in the Mills,
Okay, yeah.
the Mills University, yes.
Okay, but that was booked technically. It's not gonna be on the sheet, but that was booked
Yes.
in 23-24.
Yes, yes.
No, it wasn't it came in July of 20,
When did it
this year,
come?
24?
It came in 23, 24, the Mills, the Donaldson money,
Did it?
yes.
Okay.
And Fund 3.
Well, either way, it's not gonna show up on any of these pages,
No, no,
right?
because I normally don't bring
Yeah.
Fund 3 to this.
No,
Yes.
no,
Okay, yeah,
but,
but the Donaldson, we got it at the very end of the year, I think.
Yeah,
I'll double check.
yeah, I think it might have, we were hoping June, but then I thought it was July, but it's there anyway.
Yeah,
Alright.
it's there, and it's in Fund 3. Any other questions?
on the actuals page,
We're on page 2 in the
Two of
little
nine.
booklet.
I can wait till we get to the next page.
Okay, are there any more questions on 23-24? Okay, then let me get my little clicker. And so the 24-25 budget summary, this is, and it's on page 3, and it is also up on the screen. You can see the tax revenue has increased by about $10 million, and that's at a 97.4 collection rate. For all, we have, PCSSD has a total 15 meals. We have, every school district has to have the 25 meals. That's every school district in the state. And then we have an additional 4.8 for our debt service. And at a 97% collection rate, that should yield us about $54,472,709. Then we have 9 meals for our technology. That's not in Fund 5, but that at a 97.4 collection rate, that should yield us 3.3. In the 25, which is our URT, at a 97% collection rate should yield us about 92. Plus our miscellaneous funding should yield us about $92,570. So, now what that comes out, and I know, Mr. Delaney, you have looked at the state aid notice. The state aid notice for 24-25 shows that we would have gotten, if we collect 98% of our first 25 meals, it would have been $8,176 per student, 8,000. But at the 97.4 collection rate, it comes to about $8,127 per student. Because what they do, they take your first 25 meal plus miscellaneous funds. And your miscellaneous funds could be your revenue in lieu and taxes, impact aid, any forest things that you get. So we, that's our taxes. Any questions on that?
Do you happen to know what you budgeted last year as a collection rate? Like, what was the?
Last year, my collection rate was 90, on the whole meal was like 95. It was 95.7. And normally, as I said, ever since I've been here, normally I budget my collections a little lower. I always like to have a $2 million cushion.
Let's talk about that. I think there's a difference though, because we no longer get state aid, so collection rate is a bigger deal. Mr. Trumper, I've asked to come here just to talk about, what other districts do that end up in our situation where we're no longer getting state aid, and how do they come up with a collection rate that provides revenue? Do you have a quick second?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Nolte, Ms. Rowlett. Good to be with y'all. It's really kind of all across the board. Folks do. A lot of folks will take an average collection rate. You can do a 3-year or a 5-year, and I think the average collection rate that you all used, Ms. Rowlett, was based on a 5-year average.
Yes.
Of about 94%. And so, yes, 97.4, thank you. So, yeah, Pulaski County, I think there are like 8 districts within the state that their local revenues generate greater than the foundation funding amount of $7,771. And as Ms. Rowlett just mentioned, at a 98% collection rate on the state aid printout from July, they have the district at $8,176.80. There are some years that you all have collected higher than 98%, some years less than that, but that's the average. But she is absolutely correct. At the 94.7, that comes out to be $8,127 per child, which is greater than the $7,771 that the foundation funding, and of course the district will collect all of that at the collection rate. And it's yours all's assessed value of almost $3.8 billion. I mean, every little percentage helps quite a bit. So I think that's a good number to use.
Okay, so the question was for you to come up and tell us what other districts have done that's in a situation like that.
Other districts, some have gone 90%, some have gone 100%, some have gone 95% in this ward, some have gone 97%, it's 96%. It's really all across the board. I talked to several business managers about some of them that I really respect, and about the going with an average, and they had no problem with that whatsoever. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's a projection, and so I think using a 5-year average collection rate is a good number to use.
Okay, so what Ms. Rowlett has been doing, that's what you would suggest?
I'm not suggesting anything, Ms.
Okay.
Worthing. That's.
I mean, you sound like you confirming something.
Yes, I mean, you can, everybody does it a little bit different. You all are in a unique situation simply because you're one of the schools that you're gonna generate more than the foundation funding. And so, you know, you could, any collection rate you put in there is gonna obviously impact what your projected ending balances are. And I think when you look at your last 5 years, looking at the, you know, you've never been below 96. The lowest rate that you had was 96.21, which was 23-24. In 1920, it was 98.25. In 2021, it was 97.55. 21-22, 96.63. 22-23, 98.67. So going with the 27.4%, I mean, that is in line with the average of those last 5 years. And you'll know, I mean, you typically get your, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you typically get good, your collections in the fall from the October 15th deadline on personal property taxes, and then, of course, in the spring, from the real estate taxes that are paid by the mortgage companies. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that all these numbers, these projections, do not take into consideration your 2024 assessment, which we are working hard to try to get an idea for you all what that's going to be. We're still waiting on some numbers from Pulaski County, but it looks like it's going to be ballpark around $117 million more in assessed value from 23-24, and that's not even being taken in consideration because those tax collections will come in the spring in 25 based on the 2024 assessment. So I think that helps with a little bit of, you know, being conservative. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it sure did.
So other districts that are in our situation do all kinds of things. They budget real low, they budget real high.
Correct.
In terms of the collection rate.
They know, keep in mind, and I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt. The difference there with a lot of these other districts, with the exception of 8 or 9, is they know they're gonna get 98% on their 25 mils. So really what they're talking about is everything above their 25 mils. And for most districts, that's their debt service mills.
So a lot of these districts that we talked about, the districts that are off the formula, that are outside of foundation funding, the 8 districts that you referred to, a lot of these districts are relatively small, wouldn't you agree, compared to Pulaski County?
I would.
And I don't know about every single one, I haven't looked into it, but some of them, what drives them over the threshold is one major thing, like a power generating plant, or, I don't know, a casino, it may not a casino, but this type of thing.
A limited number of taxpayers, that's absolutely correct.
But there's usually either that, or like in Hot Springs Village or something, for example, you have a lot of retirees, so there aren't many students or something, you know, because it's a function of your ADM going into your tax base, so,
You have some of these, like up in Heber Springs, you know, around Greer's Ferry, you've got a lot of lake homes that are worth a lot, but it's lake homes, it's not a lot, so the enrollments are down compared to the assessed value, so that's what drives their local revenue per student up. And there's a district down in South Arkansas that, yeah, there's one or two, I think it's one, I can't tell you who it is because I don't work with them, but one major taxpayer. And so I think with Pulaski County, I think you've got a whole lot more diversification.
yeah, but probably one major taxpayer may not, I don't know, depending on the taxpayer, I guess, not pay their bill, you know, or not be delinquent. So you can almost always count on that power generating company to probably, you know, always pay their tax bill. Whereas in Pulaski County, if it's diversified, you could, you know, end up with smaller taxpayers that just, for whatever reason, decide not to pay that year. So I guess, I'm not arguing with you, I'm just pointing out that that we're the biggest district that I can see so far that's gone off the formula like this.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So we got off on this because of rates. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Trumper on rates, revenue? Mr. Trumper doesn't really deal with the expenditure side of things, so anything to do with property tax revenue, questions like that.
We did look at one thing just to add, for you all not to be at the 7,771, your collection rate would have to be at 93%, and it's never been close to that.
I didn't write this down, I'm sorry. What did we base last year's collection rate on? What percentage?
I normally do it, Ms. Parda, I go back and look what my collection rate was the year before. That's the way I've been doing it since I've been here.
Okay.
So I don't, just for my own, I do it kind of like I do myself at home, I don't budget out my money. So that's the way I've always done it. And I didn't go back and look at it, but I just always do it like my previous year. And I look at the number, I always want to be about 2 million under of
So-
what I do, what I think I'm going to get.
So do we think last year was probably, the collection rate was probably based on like a 96%?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
And the difference, you know, and Mr. Trumper, step in, please, or Ms. Roulette, but the difference is, again, we are no longer receiving state aid. So you were guaranteed the first 25 meals at 98%.
Correct.
So, you know, even if you say at 96, we knew it was going to come in at 98 with the first 25 meals because that's the state guaranteed it. We no longer get that guarantee, and so, you know, I'll be honest, my thought was, what's the 5-year average that gives us what I would say a conservative approach based upon our context of collection rates? And, you know, it's a projection. If we end up at 98.98, that's a great year, and if we end up below 97, we're going to have to, you know, look at our rates. But the good news is that we'll know our first October tax revenue check, so that'll help.
Well, the state aid notices that their collection rates are all based on calendar year, and of
Right.
course, you all are doing this based on
Fiscal year.
Okay, so,
We were up at revenue still on page
we're on
3 of
revenue,
9.
so any more questions about the property tax? We're clear that we're doing that at a 97.4, hence the reason, and that $146 million does include our debt service amount. That's gonna get in there, because that goes into, you know, we're doing funds 1, 2, and 4, so that accounts for that. The local revenue is lower, because as I said previous, we had a lot of donations, we had other grants that we won't get this year. So that's a big difference in the local revenue and that sort of thing, okay? State aid, as you can see, that dropped as well. Last year, our state aid was 22 million, this year's 18 million, and of course, that's because of the difference between the 742,000 in state aid that we got. No, we got last year for state foundation aid, because what they do, you know, they expect for you, whatever you don't collect for what the per student rate, they give you the difference. So we got $762,875 last year for foundation aid, and then the true-up amount, as Mr. Trump was talking about, the 98%, and Dr. McNulty, if you don't collect up to 98% of that first 25, they'll true you up. So our true-up amount last year was $2,854,465. So that would have been like a 97% collection rate for last year, because the URT for last year, 98% was $85,985,000. We collected $83,130,000. So the difference is that 2.8 to bring us up to the 98%. So when I did the calculation, it came out to 97%. And that includes our miscellaneous funds. And in that is your revenue and lower taxes. And that was a big number last year. I think it was $900,000.
Delinquent funds in a previous calendar year would be booked, like, for example, we had normally would have expected somebody, let's say they were gonna pay their house pay, or make their tax payment, but they decided not to and be late. And then we received it, we would have normally received it in one fiscal year, but now we're receiving it in the next. We're booking that in the year that we received it, right?
Right. And the way they have that line out in the handbook is considered other revenue.
Okay.
It's not considered with the taxes. They do it different in our handbook. Any other questions? I'm trying to think of that, those are all the notes I had about the taxes. Any other questions about the taxes? Okay. Talked about the state aid that
Dr.
dropped.
Tate, just a second,
Oh,
did you?
sorry, she's going to what?
Okay.
Okay, we talked about the state aid dropping because of the foundation aid we're not getting because of our increase in assessments, and then we're not getting the true up, the 2 million, because as Mr. Trumper said, if we collect 94%, we still will not get any aid, because that 94% is gonna be more than the $7,771 that the state says that everybody should get. So we would have to collect, like, our collection rate would have to be like 93% for us to get any kind of true up from the state. Because what we'll collect at a 90, even at a 96, 95% collection rate would be more than a 7,000 per student. So we won't get any true up. Now I can say that for sure. Because since I've been here, we've never collected below 96. Any other questions?
Well, let me get you again on property taxes.
Okay.
Because we had actuals that ended at 136.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to hold, or do you want to? Okay. 136.4, we had an actuals, our property taxes, and now we're budgeting 146. So regardless of the discussion of the, collection rate, which does matter a lot,
It
because
does,
1% can be a wild swing, even with the collection rate, just where it is, we're expecting $10 million in additional property tax revenue, right? Now, it does offset against the state foundation aid, but there wasn't much there last time, right? There was
Not at all.
700,000. I mean, it's a lot, but not when you're
Not
talking,
much.
not when you're slinging around numbers like this.
Exactly.
So we are forecasting, just a forecast, but we are forecasting in the fiscal year 24-25 to have a $10 million property tax increase over the previous year, correct?
That's what that 97.4 collection
Yes,
rate will yield.
with the 97.4 and backing out the 762,000, which you lose in state aid, right? Because you can't take the 10 million increase in property tax revenue and not offset it against the 762, right? Because the reason the property taxes went up, or the reason state aid went down is because the property taxes went up,
Property tax,
right?
Yeah.
But basically, it looks like, even if you back all that out, it looks like essentially a $9 million projected increase in property tax revenue year over year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's in this budget
Yes.
compared to last year's actuals,
Yeah.
okay?
Any other questions about the revenue? Dr. Tate?
I
Okay.
haven't added this up, but
Okay.
it just seems like if we have 9 million more in the property tax, and there's only, from what I can see, so it's only a $3 million difference between last year and this year.
Yeah, and look
In the
at your
total
local
revenue.
Yes, yeah, look at your local revenue. See, local revenue in 23-24 was 4 million. This year, I'm only budgeting, 1.9.
Okay, so, but that's only $2 million difference. So
Yes.
that's why I'm confused why,
Okay, and then if you look at the, compensation, fixed asset, that's about 200,000 more.
yeah, so that's 2,200,000. but
And
this
then,
is 6 million
and then
less.
your indirect costs is in there.
Yeah, but none of that adds up to $6 million.
What-
That's what I'm confused.
That's,
Why the
that's
total
3
revenue-
million, that's 3 million. From 169 to 166, the difference between the two, you mean, those two numbers?
Right, is a difference between 3 million, but we gained 10 million, and I don't believe all these numbers equal 6 million. So somewhere we lost more than what these numbers are showing, unless I'm adding
Okay,
it up wrong,
so,
which
let
is
me-
possible.
okay, your state aid, the difference between your state aids, 22 and 8. If you take 18 from 22, that's about 4.
So 4, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then your local revenue, last year was 4.4, this year is 1.9. So you're almost
Two
there.
more, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Compensation fixed assets is 2.2. So it's about, well, next time I'll show you, I'll do it in and out for you,
Okay.
okay?
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, not a problem, not a problem. I get it because y'all got this so late, so ask me anything. I get it, not a problem.
This, I think we already talked about this, but I didn't write it down.
Okay.
The compensation, I guess, loss, fixed assets, was that an insurance payment?
Well, that's an expected insurance payment.
Okay.
We haven't confirmed that yet, but it's for Dr. McNulty, College Station.
Yeah, it's just College Station.
College Station. And that's based off of the,
So it's based off of the architectural designs.
Okay, all right.
And the bare minimum construction costs. It doesn't account for any insurance that would cover for some of the damages we had in our technology, in our books, our chairs. So we've been conservative on that one.
Okay, hold on, let me put a pin right there.
okay.
Okay, so College Station is set to receive how much?
2.25, and that's conservative.
Okay, I thought it said 2.5, so it's 2.25?
Yeah, 2,250,000.
Okay. And that's gonna go toward,
Well, the discussion has been twofold. One is it is going to go to repair at 2024 code, the left side of the school, or it would go towards any refit or restructuring we do, that we just add that to the refitting of College Station, based upon our facilities plan.
so we won't have money to do the new College Station, closing it in and stuff.
This is just dealing with the left side that was damaged by the roof, yeah.
I know, I went and seen it.
Yeah.
So, they can just not even look for a new one? We're not even gonna,
That's
not
not-
in the plan?
That's actually, it's in the plan. Nothing has changed in our initial plan. We just, a lot of the money has gone towards Mills University High School and finishing that project. Because we had such an increase in our inflation on steel and wood.
Okay, but we still talking about doing something for Robinson too?
Right.
Is that what we voted on?
We haven't voted yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just get a little bit of clarification, Dr. McNulty?
Sure.
On this 2.25, is that, did I understand you correctly whenever you said that that is only for the actual building? That doesn't include a payment that we could potentially get for the contents
Yeah.
of the building that were damaged? So we're looking at maybe getting even more than a 2.25?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Any idea how much?
I was given, the whole project might be 2.5 million.
Okay.
And I talked to our insurance provider today, and the architect needs to get their plans over to them, and then they're going to then create space for doling out that cash for any construction that's coming. But, you know, we wouldn't start construction until summer, because unlike our building over there, those are high school students who do a really good job of obeying signs. Elementary students, on their hand, struggle with signs, and we don't want to put them in a construction site.
Oh, yeah, I completely get that. I just want to make sure that I'm noting
And
correctly.
it could be more. I mean, there was such extensive water damage to not just the walls, but the cement, and then also our technology and our books and everything like that.
Okay. I guess I just didn't realize that they were going to pay out for that, which is good,
Yeah.
but I just somehow missed that.
Oh, no worries.
Ms. Rowlett, I know you're
Yes.
going to get to expenditures, but since this has a relationship to expenditures, I'm going to ask it now.
Okay.
So we talked about this category for last year with Maumelle and a couple of the other projects, and you
Yes.
said that there's probably about 600,000 left to pay out
Yeah.
for work to be done. Is that 600,000 booked in expenditures here in this budget?
Yes, you'll see it on maintenance. I've worked a lot on this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be, if you see, when we go to the maintenance expenditure, that's a big number from last year, it's 1.7.
So non-tech repairs and maintenance, is that
Yes, that's where it should be, yes.
64310?
Yeah.
So
And-
that,
Yeah,
Okay.
and what they may do, it may not really get, coded right to that particular account code. You know, we have, they may do supplies or whatever, but we will certainly keep, an eye on that. That's one of the things I had on my desk, and I apologize.
But you factored that 600,000 in, that was carried over. So we got all the revenue last year, but we still have
Yes.
some expenses that are coming up in this one, but the revenue was booked last year.
Yeah.
So, have you, now, for this 2.2 for College Station, is that booked in these expenditures, or is that gonna be for next year?
It's not booked in these.
Because he just said we're gonna start on it in the summer, which would mean,
Yeah,
which
so
would mean,
they're not booked in these expenditures, no, sir.
okay, so, all right, so,
Yeah.
all right, I
So
see.
if you start on it early.
That would be in the budget for next year, basically, at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Okay, the expenditure.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's not booked in here.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Because like I said, I don't mind, because I know, you know, you were a little late getting this. And it's a lot.
And Ms. Rhodes, just, I know this is it's a little bit of Fund 5, but it was also a little bit of our ESSA money. We've just spent about $5 million, or will be spending $5 million on upgrade of computers this year.
Yeah, is it five?
Yeah. So, that's also taking some of the increase in expenditures.
Upgrade on computers for the students?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Fund 5, okay. Mhm.
Yeah, it was part of Fund 5 and part of our ESSA cash, so.
Okay, the next line item on the revenue is indirect cost, and that's kind of a fluid number. What that is that we can, federal funds for, any, vendor that we pay over $25,000, there's a formula that we can use, and they let us, they'll pay us back from that. And we have to, if I budget it in Fund 6 and don't budget it over 2, I'll get an error in my cycle, so we had to budget that. That's what we have budgeted, and we normally get about that much every year for indirect costs. That's just for us paying the school district for managing their funds, managing the federal funds. So that would bring us total revenue for this year, $169,386,552. Any more questions about revenue? Okay, expenditures. There's a detail on that. Salaries and benefits, 130 million. Compare that to last year, we're about 3 million over. And I'll go ahead and explain. Of course, we're over, you know, like the teacher salary fund is 425,000 more about. And you can see that the, classified salaries are over some. And the employee benefits, that's the biggest number that you're over. And remember when I did my final, revenue report, summary for last year, we moved 2.7 million from operating to federal, because we were over on our maintenance of effort. So that's the reason that actual and what we have budgeted this year is so much of a difference. I have to go ahead and budget. I can't budget make that move again, because as I told them in the budget meetings, there are too many factors. You have to make sure, number one, that you have funds, and whatever Fund 6, you want to move those expenditures to. And you also have to make sure that you have some allowable expenditures. So that's why we have to budget the total amount. Does that make sense?
Let me just make sure I understand.
Okay.
So we budget the full amount for employee benefits, but then towards the end of the year, next year, we take a look at that and we see what, if anything, can be paid for and moved over into the federal
Yes.
fund, right?
And that's, and particularly on our maintenance of efforts, the SPED. We have a certain amount of money that we have to, and it's the state law, all school districts have to do it, spend on SPED. So, it's called maintenance of efforts. So if we're over, then Belinda, my wonderful federal budget manager, give her kudos. We spent several nights up here going around and saying, okay, this is allowable, do we have money to move it? This is allowable, and we just have to do it, and because it's so late in the year, we have to look for something normally in benefits or something besides salary, because after June 30th, we cannot redistribute it. So, and we have to make sure that MOE is met before we can do it. So it's a tedious process. So, yeah, so that's the reason for that big change, one of the reasons for those big changes. Any other questions about salaries and benefits?
Well, I just want to get you on federal funds because I had a question about that.
Okay.
So the actuals that just ended for 23-24, you told us, I think it was in an email essentially, that you were able to, well, I don't know who gets the credit or whatever, but
That's okay.
essentially,
But continue,
we
you do
were
it.
able to move to about $2 million from operating into federal last year, at the end of the year before the budget closed, which was a
Before we
big
closed the
part,
books, yeah.
a big part of the reason supporting our legal fund balance, because we had projected a 12-something for legal, and then we ended up at 15. So you could argue essentially a very large part of the difference between,
Yes.
a very big part, was this maneuver, or whatever you want to call it, of funds between operating and federal. So, and that's established, that's done. But
Yes.
what, if anything, in this budget have you factored that in?
I have not.
You haven't factored in any similar moves at all in this document?
No.
That's something that you would look at the end of the year, like you did last time, and figure out what you can push around. So this budget, in other words, as it's written right now, doesn't assume any sort of
Transfer.
relationships or transfers between operating
Well, movement
and-
of expenditures, yes.
Yes, right. I mean, I'm sure there's a right word for it, okay? I
Yes.
don't want to get you
Yes.
on the hook for a wrong word, but essentially nothing similar to what happened at the end of last year is budgeted into this, that's supporting this fund balance, the
Right.
16.2, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And as I said, that's simply because you don't know if you're gonna have first the money in Fund 6 or allowable expenditures in Fund 2. So that's a too risky of a thing to do.
Okay.
I have
Okay.
I have a question. So this is the first full year, the I guess is it this this year, the 24-25 is the first full year of DVA closure, or was that this past year?
This is the first full year.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
It'd be
is
the
the
first year it would
yeah.
show up on the books, right? Because we didn't terminate contracts in the middle of the year last year. We let them run out, and so,
Yeah.
So we should have saved roughly 2.5 on salaries from the closure of DVA.
2.7.
Okay, 2.7. But our salaries and benefits have gone up 3 million from last year. So I just need to understand that. If we cut 2.7, how are we still,
And we also went from, block schedules every day with our middle school to AB, which also reduced math and science teachers. I think part of that is, in a dig into HR, and Dr. Williams isn't here, is that we have services that we need to provide to students such as dyslexia. Title III students would be ELL students. We do have the academies. And then we've had a couple hundred students come in, and so you're going to have to purchase service that. And then the other piece is, and I think we've done a much better job this year, and Ms. Verla, I think would agree, is that we've kind of captured more of our employees that are now permanent and not temporary, so that we can keep track of it. And I would also say that I think and I really give Ms. Verla credit, she's been very conservative on expenditures. She's running our health insurance, for example, benefits at 0.29, which we've traditionally done at 0.28. So that's going to increase costs. And as they say, it's better to be conservative, especially on expenditures, and shoot high, and then see where we end up at the end of the year.
do we have any idea how many more positions we had to hire for the 24-25 year, or 24-25 school year than we had last year, for example, for special ed? And if you don't have it right now,
We can get it for your next board meeting easy.
that's fine.
Yeah. I think it would be nice to break down, because, it seems like there was a reshifting of emphasis. Now, we are a district with certain schools with large special need populations. And, they are certainly staff intensive. I'm getting my look from Dr. Whitfield. So that's one of the elements. But I think a nice breakdown of where the staffing went, because we did end DVA, and we did end, every day block schedules for reading and in mathematics, which reduced staff. So let's have the next board meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When we talk about the therapies through the special ed, and we look at, the cost versus our employees. We've hired a company, right, to come in and we're paying them to do our services,
We do have,
Synergy,
we do have a couple actually,
Progressive.
services that,
Didn't we do a
come in.
new one this year?
Purchase service.
I can't,
We had a conversation about that, and it was with, Ms. Cole.
Ms. Cole, yeah. Yeah.
But I think we did add another purchase service agreement on that. And then we also have residential students that are placed in day treatment, and so that's an element of that. But that usually comes out of the special education
so,
budget.
so I had somebody bring something to me, and this may be something for next week, not tonight, but looking at, we're paying this company, we lost over 20 employees in that area, field of therapy from last year. And in doing so, we're now paying more for this company to bring in the services for us.
I'm sorry, I have not done a comparison on that.
That's okay. Like I said, it's just something I'm bringing to the table on expenses.
Yeah.
Because I only received it this afternoon, and I haven't even processed everything yet.
Okay.
But I'm very curious as to, so our salaried, maxed out pay rate to our current, well, they're classifieds, not certifieds, right? Because they're our contractors that are employee, they're getting paid an average of $65 an hour, but we're paying this other company $243. So I'm seeing that we're paying an outside source because we lost employees that were longtime employees or classified.
I think we can get you the information on that, but
Right.
I'm not gonna say a gut feeling. I think there may be some apples to oranges based on what you're talking about because at $214 an hour, that would be, really intensive services for a really, needy student. And then we have like speech
I'm sorry,
pathologists.
I said that incorrectly. My glasses are not showing right, but no, that was contractor rate versus daily rate of pay for OT position and temporary OT. So,
So occupational therapy. Okay, not
so
counseling
in therapy
services.
there, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, we've lost employees on that, and now we're paying more to get the services than we were to this people that were employed by us.
I haven't seen that information, but we'll bring it to you next.
Okay. Any more questions on salaries and benefit expenditures budgeted for this year?
So for the classified salaries, it's pretty much what, the same from
Yes,
last year?
yes.
So we're not even looking to increase salaries for classified, or is that
Not at
we
this
don't
time.
do in here? Okay.
Not at this time. Not at this
Yeah, this budget doesn't assume any raises or anything, right? It's,
No,
Right.
don't do that to me,
Okay,
please. Okay, I mean, I'm classified, I'd get a raise too, but don't do that to me.
okay, thank you.
Okay, maintenance and operations, $9,513,000, and I do have a breakdown on all of these. Transportation, that's gone down from last year, and I will say maintenance went down a little bit too, and that's because we started the insurance work. And other expenditures, I have a breakdown on that, on the details in your booklet as well. So, total operating fund for maintenance, transportation, and other expenditures, and that's your mandated funds, your mandated supplies for teacher supplies, stuff like vehicle rentals, custodial supplies, it's all broke down. And then our debt service payment, $16,466,000, total expenditures, $168,742,000. For a projected ending balance for 2025, $16,235,000.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
the buses that we bought,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it
Okay.
20 buses that we replaced, or is that too many?
I think that's too many, I think it was 10, wasn't it?
Well, we
it's
had the
10.
electric ones.
Yeah.
It's,
The
yeah,
propane.
diesel.
Propane.
Propane.
Oh, propane, sorry.
10.
Sorry.
So do we have any idea how much money we saved in fuel costs with, getting the new buses and them running on propane versus fuel, just out of curiosity?
I budgeted about the same amount of money for fuel,
Okay.
so.
So,
maybe a little
yeah, and I
less.
think
I
that's,
don't know the savings, I'm sorry.
I think the benefit of the propane buses, and Mr. Johnson isn't here, or Ms. Nichols isn't here, is that they're also highly efficient. And so there is savings by using propane, even if the cost may be the same, the engine is more efficient, and so, I mean, diesel's efficient, but, you know, diesel also lasts forever.
Yeah.
A diesel bus go 300, 400,000 miles, that's the benefit of a diesel bus, where a propane, we're not sure, it's a new technology, but it was a good deal. It was a really
But
good.
also on those, didn't we get a grant?
Yeah, we
We
did.
need to upgrade the buses anyway, but we
Right.
got a grant to
We
offset
did.
most of the costs.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah, I
So-
did.
it was a
That was
2
kind of
million.
deal.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I was just curious if we saw any savings from switching from diesel. For some reason, I was thinking electric, but now that I know it's
Yeah.
propane, it's,
I
I
just
can
called
see
Mr.
whether
Johnson
there
and
would-
say, hey, this is how much I got budgeted for fuel, is this enough? And he said, yes, okay. That, not my area of expertise there. So any questions about this? Yes, ma'am?
Is there a sheet that itemizes the debt service payments?
No, because it's just the principal and the interest, but I can get that for you. I have a whole itemized sheet, yeah.
The principal and interest of, is it 5 things, 10 things?
Two,
One,
it's two things, just principal, interest, and then we have to do like $1,000, some kind of service,
I mean, of what are we paying principal and interest that's costing us?
16 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What-
You wanna know how much is each, how much is principal and how much is,
No,
interest?
what are we paying that to?
Sylvan Hills project
Oh,
would be
okay.
one, the Maumelle, I mean,
The
I think
bonds.
Maumelle's
It's-
projects are still there.
It's the bonds, right?
Yeah, it's the
That's the
bonds.
bonds,
Is it
yeah.
the
Yeah,
bonds?
Yeah,
we've
it's the
got-
bonds,
we've
all the
got-
bonds,
We've got like
and second lien,
5 or 6 active sets of
Active
bonds
Yeah.
that are
That's what I
essentially,
wondered,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, that's the Fund 3 that I talked about, that he put so
Okay,
much in there.
thank
But the debt service payment is for those, yes. Okay, I'm sorry, missed that. Okay, so, as I said, I know you all got this slate, but, page 4 of 9 gives you a summary of your maintenance expenditures, and, it's pretty simple, kind of laid out. And what they normally do, if they see they should be doing, if they see that they're gonna be under in one category and they need some money somewhere, they move them around, they move it around. But, that's what they have so far this year. And as you can see, their biggest expenditure is, most of them for utilities, you know, like the light bill. Property insurance did go down. It was 1.6 last year, so it went down. It's 1.4 this year. So that went down.
was the state sending money along for property insurance, or does that come through foundation funding and therefore we
No,
don't
they
get
sent
it?
us some last year, but we're not getting it
Okay,
this year. That
so
was one of those.
one time.
That was one of those things that was also a decrease in, revenue. You
Okay.
saw those decreases, yeah.
That's other state aid, right? Was that where it was?
No, it wasn't, yeah, it was on the other state aid, yes,
Okay.
sir. Yeah, it was on the other state aid for last year. I think it was like 200,000. So, and then, on page 5, it's just a summary of what we have, budgeted for, transportation. Of course, that went down because we didn't have the grant, so that went down about $2 million. And then the other one is just a summary of other expenditures. It starts on page 6, and I did something a little different this year. I did it by fund. Like, Fund 2000 is our main operating fund, so that's gonna be the biggest numbers, is $5 million out of that. And then our other operating, that's 2001, and we normally put, things over there that, like, you cannot code to 2000, like if I buy something, if we pay something for athletics, they don't let you charge it out of 2000, it has to be the 2001, certain function codes. So I never budgeted a lot in there. Fund 2004, that's, Heron's, her Career Academy's grants. And Fund 2016, that's where we put all of our indirect costs, and that's just kind of a little bucket that we don't, only thing I really pay out of that is for my graduations, and as you can see, most of that's graduation and that's streaming for the sports, comes out of that. Adult ed is very small. Fund 22, 23, that's one of our categorical funds, for professional development. It's small as well. So I won't go through each one of them, but those pages makes up the 10,498,000.
On page 8 of 9, 2275 ALE, you've got that as a negative 817?
Yes, because that's how much we're gonna have to pay them. So I put that, and it's because of the way I had to put it accounting wise, it came out to be that way, because I had to,
Okay.
let
So
me see if I can.
That isn't messing up your, because I would think of a negative expenditure as revenue.
Yeah, but that 800,000 is budgeted in my fund 2,000 other expenditures.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So it washes. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I've taken it out of 2365 and put it over in 2,000.
All
Okay? Like I said, ask me anything, because I know y'all just got this, so, and I understand if you have any other questions.
Ms. Roy, you do have that really nice spreadsheet.
Yes, I'm gonna get to that. I wanna give them an
Yeah,
opportunity
you bet.
to kind of peruse this, because as I said, I know they got it late.
Okay,
Okay.
so a question on the maintenance and operations. So, looking at the budget sheet you gave us at the last meeting,
Uh-huh.
and it says that the budget for maintenance and operations last year was like $8.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone up about 1.3, it looks like, but, it looks like we have spent, based on the last budget sheet, we spent 120% of our budget, so it looks like we were at like 9.9 million in expenditures, so
Yes, ma'am.
where's the $400,000 in savings?
The part of that is gonna be the insurance. Remember that went down?
Okay,
Went down. And the other part is probably because we paid that, repairs for the damages. So we won't have that this year for that. So that's probably what that is. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
it just seems like that
That-
particular category is
Uh-huh.
budgeted lower than it should be, since we were 20% over.
Yeah, and remember, 20% over was because of the insurance and doing the repairs. You know, we had to do those repairs.
Okay.
For that. So we had, and then also we had, a grant for $400,000 for the safety grant. That was $430,000 safety grant. That's it right there.
And then transportation,
Mm-hmm,
last year we budgeted, it looks like 3.9 million.
uh-huh.
And this year we're at only 2 million, is that right?
Yes, and I'm gonna tell you, when we did the budget, when we had our budget meetings, we forgot to budget for the match for the grants. So that's why we had so much over than what we budgeted, because we had to match that grant, $1,000,000-something, so that's why we went so much over. So this year, we're not getting that grant, so we didn't budget for that,
Okay.
okay? Okay, any other questions?
Just a question for Dr. McNulty. I'm not asking for numbers, I'm just asking for, because we went to academies at the high school, and we voted on this, and now we've had a whole year under the academies model. We knew that there would be a cost associated with it, you know, moving the high school to block schedule, hiring the additional teachers, whatever the costs were that went into the academies for the high school, and I'm strictly talking about at the high school. And have we found that is in line? Are the academies costing more than we thought they would, about what we thought they would, based off of the estimates that were originally given? Like, how are we finding the academies, you know, in terms of the increase in cost associated with doing that program?
You know, I think we've, sorry, I'll step away. Our initial conversations, we were really trying to make it budget neutral. But what we find is we're adding partnerships, which is a good thing, but that's also increased. And looking at Dr. Whitfield, this creates staffing too. And as we increase the pathways, we increase the partnerships, we increase the, you know, the robustness of the academies. I think some of our staffing has come in that direction. Dr. Whitfield, you can nod on that.
Let the record-
Yes or no would be okay. I'm open to either conversation.
have a lot of partners who are taking on a tremendous amount of cost.
The box.
Cost is matching with.
You're probably gonna have to come to the box.
Yeah.
After you hit sentence 2, it was time.
Let me put a disclaimer, exact numbers, I don't
No,
know.
I,
That's
and,
not what I do.
and I put it right from the beginning. I said I wasn't even asking for exact.
Right,
Right.
but as far as partners sharing a huge percentage of cost with, coming in, sharing their knowledge, so being a teacher, not the teacher of record, of course, paying for refabrication of classroom supplies, all of those costs that a school district would probably have to take on themselves to have all these specialized programs to lead to all these certifications. So that's costs that partners take on. So we don't, and who knows how much that is. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of money. I
She
sit in
probably
a
does.
meeting with, at meals and listening to them talk about the welding program and how much money that they're putting into that, building that, and making sure that it's industry standards and all of that. So you think the output that the kids are receiving, I mean, you can't put a cost on it, but, things that they'll go straight to business and it's look just like my classroom. And those are costs that a lot of the partners are taking on.
Well, I guess I was just curious to understand if, because you see it now, we've had a full year of it, and I'm not questioning the results or anything. I'm just curious because throughout all the time that I've ever heard about block schedule, going from 7-period to block schedule, and I know there's like 1,000 ways you can do block schedule these days, but the traditional understanding of block schedule was is always more expensive, okay? There's a variety of reasons for that, and so I was just curious if, now that we've seen it, do we think, well, this is driving some additional costs that we didn't anticipate, or what's just the general vibe of how you're feeling about the budget
So,
for the,
I would say my general vibe is, yeah, you're correct. That It's increased some costs in staffing because we have more partners and we have more in-kind services. But I also say that, the leadership of Ms. Herring and our principals, that we're using them in an optimal way. I mean, our students are really being productive in the academies, and I'm saying it's in a really good place. And our mission is to provide opportunities for our children to have post-secondary experiences.
And by the nature of some of those classes, of course, you can't have 28 kids in some of those classes. For safety reason, not only just instructional purposes, but like the welding, for example, you can't have 28 kids in that little space. So costs with some of those class sizes have to be a little bit smaller than the norm.
okay. All right, though that was good enough. That's all I really wanted to hear.
And I just want to tell you, now that you mentioned that, part of what's in that direct cost on your summary of other expenditures by fund on page 7, that $15,000 is for Career Academy. That's for Ford NGL. And then those supplies, because she wanted $175,000 this year for her things that her grant would not, $175,000 total. So those two things she didn't have enough money for, so I budgeted those in 2016. So $15,000 and 30 plus $36,000 was that $51,000 that she's gonna have to do some stuff with there. Okay? Okay, any other questions before I get to my little presentations?
You have more presentations?
I got more presentations.
Okay,
Dr.
well, then
McNulty
keep
loves
going.
graphs.
Just one
Okay, go ahead.
Do we have any, estimates of when these active bonds are over so that the debt payments no longer have to be made?
Jack, do you know when they'll be over, 2030?
In 2048,
2040?
Longer than,
All of them are 2048?
Yes, yes.
yeah.
well, not all of it, that's when your final bonds pay off, is in 2048.
Final bonds.
You have some that mature in 2035, 2035 and 2048.
Okay,
And then that's when the bonds pay off, that's when the debt service mills roll off the books.
okay, thank you.
So what this is just the simplest chart in the world. What I've done here on these, I'm Dr. McNulty, if you can see these yet. That's just like if you, 2023, 24 expenditures, you can see that they're basically flat just by looking at the pie chart. Like orange is for the salaries, you see that's still about 18%. For classified salary, 30 million and 31 million is flat. Teacher salaries, salary is still 41%. M&O is still 5 and 5. So they've increased, but the percentage for each one of those categories is basically flat. If you look at the 23-24 expenditures compared to the 24-25 budgeted expenditures. The revenue, you can see that the biggest part of that pie chart is our taxes. Hence the reason why sometimes we run into a cash flow thing in certain times of the month, because we gotta wait till we get our check. So, the yellow is local revenue. You see how big it was in 23-24. You see how it's got smaller. So that's just show you that all of our percentages are about the same in overall categories. Just for that. And the next one is just, I went and did a 5-year comparison. If you look at that, and this is also in your little booklet too, you can see that our changes, they jumped up from 22 to 23. 22, 23, remember that's when the Learns Act came in. So we had a big jump there. And then for 24, that's when we had from 23, 24, that's when we pushed all of those ESSER expenditures back in our budget. So we had the Learns and the ESSER expenditures, so that's why we went up 9%. But if you go from 23, 24 to 24, 25 budgets, it's just a 1% increase overall expenditures. And then we had a 2% increase in revenues. So, simple little fun chart. So I'll let y'all look at that for a minute.
Ms. Rowlett, you don't have any transfers to food service in this budget?
No. And if you notice, if you look on the chart, ever since Chartwell has been here, we haven't had to do that. 21, 22 was the last year we had to do it. Now, one thing that I just learned today that is not in the budget, but it shouldn't have a big impact, is that we cannot put the ABC kids, we can't put their charges on the balance sheet. So if we're looking for some funds to pay for that, but we may have to pay about $20,000 because we got 10,000 that's on the balance sheet. We may have to, if it's the same, we may have to pay about $20,000 for our students. But that's an overestimate because we only have 2 schools that have ABC programs that the kids cannot eat free. And I think they said it's Baker and Chenal. So we may have to do that. But we're looking to see if we can, get that money somewhere else. Okay, any other questions, concerns, or comments? Like I said, I know it's a lot, and y'all just got this, so I'm okay with that.
We can still ask questions, but
Yes,
I'm gonna go ahead and get a motion on the floor to approve the proposed 24-25 budget.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Let me get a second.
Second.
Mr. Thomas, I made the motion, Mr. Thomas second. That's not to cut off. Okay, we can keep going.
So, as I look at this, for the 23-24 school year, we ended at 15.5. We're getting $3 million in additional revenue, but still we're only ending $700,000, projected to end only $700,000 more next year than this year. And then, at our September meeting, the classified staff, the security guards, brought us a proposal that we didn't take any action on, but, I guess because we didn't take any action on it or anything, that's not included in these numbers either. So, I don't remember, Mr. Delaney, do you have any idea what that number was?
That was
if-
like 500,000 something.
For the security guards, yeah.
So, we know that that is coming, probably, not obviously a guaranteed approval, but we know that we're gonna have to take that into consideration. Are there any other large expenditures that you, Dr. McNulty, see coming down the pipeline that have not been accounted for in this budget?
We are going to replace the computer for our teachers, but that will be for next year.
So it'll go in the 25, 26
Yeah,
expenditures?
and part of the reason too is, you know, I think it was a good idea. We're trying to say, okay, we're gonna get our teachers the computers before they leave, but, you know, we have turnover in our staff, and we don't want to hand computers to staff who may not return. Not to say that they would take it, but we do get a lot of loss. So that's really coming up, it'll be about $2 million for the 25-26 school year, and we're looking at using our ESSA money for that. And, you know, again, it's a kind of a new territory, because when we get our collection rates for the October tax payment, that'll give us a good idea of where we stand. And I think that's the difference between this year and last year. Last year, we were assured 98% of the first 25 mills, because we were still getting just the state foundation aid. This year, we don't know, but we know that 97.4 is going to give us 8,000 per child, which is better than the 7,700. So I think that we really should wait to see what our collection rate is before we make any jump towards supporting that initiative. And it should be coming when? End of October?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, based on the numbers that we got tonight, how likely do you think it is that these numbers will be realized? Because it seems like if we ended up approving like the security guard salaries, that's gonna be an automatic
500,000.
500,000.
As proposed,
As proposed. So we have that, and then I'll let you answer that, and then I'll ask my second question.
Well, you know, we were in a more projection budget than we might have been last year, but last year, you know, we had that budget meeting where we were looking at 12.5 million as an ending balance, and we ended at 15.5. It really is going to be collection rate that's going to give us the best idea of where we're going. Now, I'm going to give kudos to our finance team. I think our expenditures are nicely conservative, and that gives some protection, right? But I would suggest in waiting. I really do want to support our security team, but waiting till we get at least a little hard numbers on that first collection, to me, is a reasonable approach.
But in terms of percentage, like, how confident are you that we're gonna be within, like, $1 or $2 million or $100,000 or $200,000 of this particular budget?
Well, I think the budget is from my standpoint, is more solid than I felt when we were here last year. I think I'm much more comfortable with this budget. I think we should have, again, some good conservatism. I like the fact that Ms. Roulette used 0.9 to calculate benefits versus 0.28. With a large budget we have, that's significant dollars. And then typically, you know, it's going to be about that collection rate.
So then my next question is kind of two-part. So one thing that would be beneficial for me is, like, we have these numbers in the booklet that we're going to vote on tonight, and if we approve those, then that's going to be our budget for the 2024-2025 school year. But what I would like to see is those numbers not change. Like, I would like to see those numbers locked in, and then maybe a second column created on a spreadsheet to show if a particular category has to be changed, how much it was changed, and then maybe an explanation for why it was changed, just so that we're more clear on exactly what is going on with the budget. So that's the first thing. And then my question is, what kind of guardrails do we have in place to try to make sure that we stay within our budget? I understand sometimes you have to change things up, you know, if you're with inflation with building, for example. We saw how much of an impact inflation had on our building costs. So I understand that sometimes things have to be changed around. But I think too that we have to stay as close to those budget numbers in those categories as possible, so we're not, for lack of a better way to put it, like robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Well, let me answer the first question, because that's easier. I agree with you 100%. We need a static beginning budget. And then what happens is, as we get revenues in, it might show us at 98% of our projected, or it might show us at 102. And then we would ask the question, why? And we would hopefully say, well, our collection rate went way up. And then we'd be all happy, versus our collection rate went down because no one paid their personal property taxes. I think that's a great way of understanding the ebb and flow of the year budget. So 100% in agreement with that. I think the thing about it is, school budgets aren't necessarily about robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's sometimes about what is a necessity and what goes on the back burner based upon that necessity. Like, you're making these judgments on what's good for kids, what's good for the academies. You know, we may have a situation where we may have, like, Lexicon come in and they reduce costs because of the supports they provide. And those costs then can be allocated to other areas that we need support in. But when we do that, I think it's a great opportunity for us to communicate that to the board. And hey, we just got another partner come in and they're doing this, this, and this. And we feel like that was going to really open up opportunities for us and send our students to universities, and we're going to be able to cover that. So, we work hard on our big rocks and our strategic plan, and we fund that. And we do have a school-based approach, that our schools are what we live and die on, and our teachers and our principals and our students. So I think having that as part of, hey, this is where we might see some of the budget flow this way, because we got an opportunity, or as you said, those 6 to 8 months when everything spiked, which was one of the horrible times that, as we're watching inflation take steel 112%. You just watched it, right? And you just knew it was going to cascade towards our building. So I guess I'm answering, love the first one, and second one is we can do explanations if we're making some shifts that make sense for kids.
What I would like to see next year, when we're having our 25-26 budget meeting, is all of our numbers be as close to 100% as possible. Like, it alarms me a little bit, like when I see the maintenance and operations, I think is what it was, at 120% of our budget. If there's an explanation for that, then it's not as alarming to me, because at least I know what's going on. But ideally, I would like to see those numbers be as close to 100% as possible, meaning I don't want to necessarily see like 95, because that means that we had our projections off by 5%. And I don't want to see 120, because that means we had our projections off initially by 20%. So the closer that we can get to 100% of our budget is something that I would like to see.
So we all have our comfort level, and I look in your eyes, and I want to be able to say to you, and I want to bring that peace into your heart. But, we have, I remember taking macroeconomics, and some of the problems is that there are so many things that are outside the control of the district that is different than a private organization. And that can be from interest rates reductions if we're looking for getting a second lien, or interest rate costs. It could be state initiatives that we weren't predicting, that are good initiatives for kids, but we didn't predict that and didn't add that into our budget. That could mean a discount in, like, fuel could go way down. And that has happened where we've had excess money in fuel because we just had a huge crash, and then we bought diesel at that price. Like, that was the, I don't know when was that 21, 22, or 20, 21?
I remember it.
I have slip.
You remember that, right?
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, it was like, it went crash, and we bought into it, and we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, and that kind of even goes back to when we got the $80 million bond. It just happened that interest rates went to a certain point that we could really restructure our bonds to not increase millage and make some money. But it was a fluke.
Yeah.
But I like your structure.
Yeah.
And I think that when we have changes, we'll do the explanation,
Yeah.
just to understand.
That would help me tremendously.
I want you to sleep at night, and I want to sleep at night too, so that's what we're gonna do.
And Ms. Potter, just remember, like this year in the maintenance, we did get that grant in the middle of the year, like that $400,000 grant. So that elevated those expenditures, and plus the, doing the repairs, that would have elevated those expenditures in the maintenance and operation. And it was, the budget for the transportation was that it was not added because when we did our budget meetings, they just forgot to tell us about the grant. So those sort of things.
Any last questions before we vote?
I don't know if this is the right time or not, but I wanted to ask, since Mr. Trumper's here, I also wanted to say about the block scheduling. I was told that the block scheduling reduced costs because you could reduce the number of teachers. And I was told that the academies wouldn't cost anything because we had the teachers, we had the classrooms, and the businesses were funding the rest of it. So I guess I would like to see when we get new partners, it sounds like every time we get a new partner, it costs us money. I would like to be made aware of that and have it come to the board so we can understand how much that's costing. Because while it's a nice idea that the cost can't be evaluated, we unfortunately do have to evaluate costs.
100%, and you know, and the thing is, we did reduce those 19 positions at the middle school, because we went to the AB. They, you know, they didn't stick around.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought.
And,
That was the
and-
middle school. I was talking about the high school, going to block at the high school,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we did save money changing the block at the middle, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't see any of it.
And, you know, I think, here's the thing I would say is, which brought me a little comfort, but, you know, again, I was looking for more comfort, is that we did have only a 1% increase in expenditures, which overall, given inflation and everything that goes on, and we did pick up about 1.6 million because of the Learns Act, that we're still kind of budgeting for. That's a good sign, and we need to just continue to control expenditures and continue to watch the revenues go up. As I said, I think Ms. Rowlett did a really nice job on expenditures. I think that they are conservative, and as I said, we'll know in our first tax whether or not the 5-year average is the right decision. We like to think it is, because other districts are doing it, and they've been successful, but we'll find out.
So in October, when we see if we get that 97.4%
Or higher.
or higher, hopefully, would you be able to assess whether you think we would have enough for a second lien bond so that we could use what we have for Robinson and then get a second lien bond for these other schools?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at, and, you know, this might be a conversation for the next meeting, but I've already asked Mr. Trumper to look at, you know, where interest rates are, because they are starting to come down. And there's a major district who is going out and buying these second liens, and we'll find out more information tomorrow, just to see where they're at, because they're all about the interest rate. You get a good interest rate, you're in a pretty good situation for a long term, and you get more bang for your buck.
Are they always fixed rates?
Yes,
They're always.
The rates float until you sell. They're fixed, the bonds stay the same.
yeah.
So theoretically, if the rate goes down, you could sell it and get the lower rate.
You could refinance.
You could refinance.
Yes, but ours are pretty pretty good
They're
interest
low
rates right
but
now.
If we got something now, it might be higher than
It might
it
be
would
higher.
2
You're right,
years from now.
then 2 years from now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other last questions? Okay, I'll put it to a vote. Let me just say this, though. Dr. McNulty, I just want to be clear, it's your recommendation we approve this budget, right?
It is my recommendation.
Okay. All right, I'm going to put it to a vote. All in favor of approving the 24-25 proposed budget, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, I have that 6-0. Okay, no further business is on our agenda, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Thomas made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Potter is seconded. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you.